to hear our conversation with Julie Chen. Before I bring her up here, I just want to tell you that Julie Chen, Barbara Walters, Katie Couric, and Meredith Vieira are the women who are groundbreaking in American television. Julie has worked in news. She has worked in primetime. She works in primetime. She hosts a daily talk show. She has expanded the role of a journalist in American television, and that is something that we really need to be aware of. Julie is a person who is an Annenberg alum, so that's very good, right? Okay. And of course, we will talk to her about her days here. I just want you to know that besides being a fantastic journalist, talk show host, Julie is a wife and a mother. And so anybody who wonders if you can do it all, we'll tell you that you can't do it all, but you can do it. And I'm going to show you a promotional reel from the talk, but before I do, our dean of the Annenberg School is here, Dean Wilson, and oh my God, Les, hey. And Julie's husband, Les Moonves, is here also, who told me to come and teach here, if you remember that correctly. Anyway, Dean Wilson would like to make an introduction, so that's good.
Good evening, everyone. This is the communication school. Good evening, everyone. Much better, much better. You are here on the second day of class, and the second official day that the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism has opened this new building. And so you are real pioneers. We've been working for 5 years to make this building available and fitting for you. And so I would like you, first of all, to give a round of applause to you as being the pioneers for this building. So if we could just... And I want to thank my very dear friend, Mary Murphy, for really being a leader at the Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, and being an empathetic teacher, in reaching out to the real practitioners and reaching out to the real world, that you will be all going in and conquering. So that's the first thing that I want to do, is really thank Mary for your good work and all the good things she's done for the Annenberg schools. Of course, I especially want to welcome our special guest, Julie Chen. Julie is speaking in the new building this year, but almost every year for the past 2 or 3 years, at least that I know of, Julie has come to the Annenberg School and spoken to students. And she is a caring graduate. She is not only a very successful person in media, but as Mary said, she has leaned forward to have it all. Wonderful kid. She even was bringing her husband with her, who's in the back of the room. And I want to thank both of them, but especially to give a real shout out to Julie for the high quality work that she has done, for the example that she presents for the Annenberg School, which, as you know, if you look around, 80% women. And unless women and people of color and others have role models that they can relate to, then it's hard to make that climb of that slippery hill. So on behalf of the entire Annenberg School and our students and faculty, I want to welcome you, Julie Chen, back home. I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Now we'll show a short promotional reel from the talk.
Cherish this experience. It was cool. Broken. Crack. I said, did you get the shot?
That's what I know. For you. share, not really like, oh, Ozzy, and
God bless you, Miss Osborne. God bless
hi, darling.
Oh, that was cute, darling.
They told me not to.
This is so much fun. What are you wearing? You smell.
I'm wearing a little, take it easy.
Describe the state of your love life. The state of my love life? California. Isn't she cute?
Coffee or top?
Captive, beautiful women already talking about multiple orgasms. This is already the best appearance I've ever had.
Have you ever used your sexuality to get what you want?
Other than now?
Wow. Are we 100% sure of our sexuality?
It's sexual chocolate with a vanilla swirl. Let me start by saying I love you.
I feel good.
Let me round and tie you up and see how you like it.
Promises, promises. I mean, look at me. Any sex is the best sex.
The show, you play a womanizer.
I bet you.
Now we got some crap to talk about.
Big time. I feel very sorry.
Prepared. I always, carry some hand.
Do you want me to spread?
Ozzy will be all over this.
Ladies and gentlemen, let the 74th Hunger Games begin.
I wish there was more of this going on. It'd be good if she'd show up at a board meeting or something.
What you guys did here today was breathtaking. Please welcome Lady Antebella. Your first love scene did not happen until last year? Okay, don't move on here, because your second love scene could happen right now.
This pretty much tops everything I've been in.
Is this when I leave you all, is it?
This is the end of
So
the
I
segment.
should say goodbye, talk people. Very nice. See you. Bye.
That looks like so much fun.
It is so much fun. Thanks for having me here. I just want to start out by saying anyone who has seen the talk, or if you haven't seen the talk, rather, it's a panel show, daytime talk show. Locally here, it's on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm the only journalist on the panel, which is kind of a statement as to where we are today in terms of anybody can be a broadcaster. Anybody can be a journalist. When I was sitting in those seats trying to get my journalism degree, I went out into the real world and I was competing with people who didn't go to journalism school. I always knew I wanted to be a journalist since I was 13, 14 years old, but I also knew I didn't have to go to journalism school. There were some people who said, go to an Ivy League school and study liberal arts, because journalism is a field where it's unlike law school, it's unlike med school. You don't need a degree. Anyone with a pen and paper and a recorder can be a journalist. The other ladies on the show with me, we have Sharon Osbourne, who everybody in this room knows, am I right? Definitely not a journalist, but very good as a daytime talk show host and a broadcaster. We have Sarah Gilbert, who was a child actor who played the middle daughter on Roseanne. We have Aisha Tyler, Ivy League educated actress, stand-up comedian, and Cheryl Underwood, who early in her years, she was serving in the U.S. military, became a stand-up comic, and is now, at age 50, has become a daytime talk show host. Let me just give you a brief overview as to how I got to where I am today. When I was a freshman and sitting here in journalism school, my main goal was just to learn how to become a reporter, how to get on the streets and ask the right questions and put together a story for the 5 o'clock local news. That's all I wanted to do. And maybe if I got lucky one day, I thought, oh, I can get on that anchor desk and I don't have to be all hot and sweaty out in downtown LA doing a story. So I graduated in 4 years. All my friends who were like yourselves sitting in these seats, what we had to do back then, and I graduated in 91, we had to send out resume tapes. You couldn't just email someone your resume back then. There was no email back then. So one thing that has not changed is that there are, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably about 213, it's between 187 and 213 local news markets across the country. New York being the #1 market. What makes it the #1 market? It reaches the biggest audience. Los Angeles, where we all live, is the #2 market. It's all about population. You go all the way up to Salisbury, Maryland. I don't even know how many people they reach in that market. And when we were told, if you want to be in front of the camera and actually be on television, you have to go to these smaller markets. You can't start in New York, LA, or Chicago, the top three.
And I want you to talk to them about this, because that's one of the things. Kids seem to think that they can, the microphone? Mine, yours?
Yours isn't on.
Mine isn't working?
Is it, where's the transmitter?
Oh,
It was on before.
was it, yeah.
Oh, dead battery.
Oh, dead battery.
But I can repeat what you're saying. People think, I know you,
Well, no, people think that no one wants to leave Los Angeles, or they want to go to Los Angeles or New York, but they don't want to go out in the country anywhere, but you did. And I want to know if you think that's still what we have to do. Thank you. I love this. Is fun.
isn't it? It's like,
Yeah,
it's like the answer to that question is, I don't know if you need to go to those small markets anymore. My first small market was Dayton, Ohio. And I was lucky because that was like the 53rd largest market. And to just give you perspective, my friends, well, I was kind of a late bloomer. I spent 4 years after graduating sending out my resume tape. So I became like the butt of all my friends' jokes. They were like, oh, it's only been like 4 years since we graduated. Are you working on your second story on your resume tape? I said, yeah, I'm still working on it. I was working behind the scenes at ABC Network News here in Los Angeles. So I was making a living, but I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, which was be with a microphone in front of the camera. So, but friends who basically got jobs right after graduation, they were what we call a one-man band. They were their own cameraman, editor, and reporter. They would go out in the field and report on local news stories. They were in Bakersfield, California. They were in Medford, Oregon, Erie, Pennsylvania. So when I got to Dayton, I was kind of lucky. working 4 years behind the scenes as a producer at ABC News, I did learn a lot about how to function in a newsroom and how to put together a story, and that's first and foremost. You have to know how to tell a story in a short amount of time because you're going to lose that person's attention span. So when I got to Dayton, Ohio, because it was a larger market and it was a market where they had a little bit more money to spend, I didn't have to be my own cameraman. I had a cameraman, I had editors who put together my stories, but you still have to be the one to write it. You still have to be the one to go out in the field and get those interviews and listen for that soundbite that you know you're going to edit into your story, and you're literally writing your story on your pad or on your laptop as your cameraman, and you are racing either back to the newsroom or racing to a part of town where you can put the signal of the microwave truck in to feed in your story. And it's hectic, but I loved it, and you have to love it, because if you want to work in journalism and you want to work reporting the news, you have to know how to deal with deadlines and breaking news. The best part of my job, I knew this was the right thing for me when the first time I went into work, and you go to the assignment desk and they're like, oh, there's a state fair, Julie, you're going to cover that, so-and-so's going to cover, there's a city council meeting, it's kind of a slow news day. And back then we didn't have cell phones, we had pagers. But when I would get a page to call the newsroom followed by 911, I knew that meant there was a breaking story. So maybe we did have cell phones, because I had to call the newsroom. They'd say, leave the county fair, there's like a 5-alarm fire, get in the truck, we'll start guiding you and your cameraman there, get on I-70 and whatever it is. That's what we call having like the fire in your belly. When you get that call and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna, go there, and there's no interview lined up for you. The assignment editor hasn't like lined up the fire chief. You're literally going to a scene, using your brain, your eyes, your ears, your equipment, the video recorder, that your cameraman or camera woman, and your news gathering, and you're putting together the scene of the crime or the scene of the story, knowing that you're probably going to get only 1:15 to 2 minutes to tell that story in a packaged form.
As you're talking, is this working now?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
I was thinking, you do have, I feel the same thing you do. I just love that. But when you were starting out, I was thinking about this. There'd only been one woman, anchor woman, on the news. Barbara Walters was the only woman when you left here. And she had failed miserably, not because of her, but because of the dynamic and what was going on. So when you left here, what were your goals? What did you think was possible?
My goal was one day to get on 60 Minutes.
Uh-huh.
I thought, wow, that is journalism at its finest. Show of hands, how many people here watch 60 Minutes? Great.
Well,
Thank God I see so
I
many
know,
hands.
I'm so happy.
The guy who created 60 Minutes, who's now dead, the executive producer, Don Hewitt, he said, it boils down to 4 words. Tell me a story. If you're a journalist and you're a good one, you know how to tell a story. I thought that would be my dream come true. I never thought it was possible. And by the way, it still hasn't come true, and it probably won't. But I started out thinking, if I could just get a job at KBC, Channel 7, reporting on the local news, and maybe be a weekend anchor, oh my gosh, I'd be the happiest person. You never know what is going to come your way. So I go to Dayton, Ohio. I signed a 3-year contract there. And I grew up in Queens, New York. I came out to USC. So if you think about it, the first 17 years of my life, I'm in New York City. The next 4, I'm in Los Angeles at USC. The next 4, I'm still in Los Angeles working behind the scenes at ABC News. And then I land in Dayton, Ohio. And I'm like, what do I do here? The good news was I looked at that job as an opportunity and a super long business trip. I had a calendar. People would come over and they would laugh because I, went to Staples. I got one of those big like ink calendars for your desk, and I put it on my wall. And each day I just marked it off because I didn't want to stay in Dayton, Ohio. I had no family there. I made friends there, but the friends I made were people from,
Dayton, Ohio.
No, well, actually, the funny thing is, I was 25 when I got there, and everybody was like me. There was someone from Yonkers, there was someone from New Jersey, there was, someone from San Francisco area, and we were all kids who were trying to get our experience, cut our teeth, get some experience under our belt, so we can go back to those big cities, those big markets that we wanted to create a life in. And luckily enough for me, I started sending out my resume tape because I just took my job so seriously. I got pretty confident and pretty decent at my job in a short amount of time. After a year, I thought that I've learned everything I can learn here. And I started putting together stories on a resume tape. And I started sending them out.
Did you have an agent?
I did have an agent.
Okay,
this is an important part of the story. An agent got me the job in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
And I was lucky that this nice, God bless her soul, Shirley Barish, she was like a pioneer in this business. She was one of the first people, and definitely probably the first woman, to represent news broadcasters. And when I signed with her, I'd never met her, but I talked to her on the phone, and she was like, you could hear her puffing. She was like, Julie, I think you got talent. And I was like, okay, Shirley Barra, she's a pioneer. She's going to sign me. And you don't pay an agent unless they get you a job. And she had inroads at all these stations because she had been dealing with the general managers and the news directors for like 50 years. So she called me up one day and she said, I think I got you a job, Dayton, Ohio. It's a great station. They're the #2 in the market. They have all the bells and whistles a reporter would want. They have a satellite truck. They have microwave trucks. You don't have to shoot your own video, blah, blah. So she said, but it's a 3-year contract, ironclad. They're not going to spend money on you to train you only for you to leave. They want 3 years out of you. And I was like, who cares? Like, I'm happy somebody wanted. I'm telling you, I got rejection tape after rejection tape returned to me.
This is very important that you hear this. This is good for you to say this because kids need to know.
Oh, yeah, no one wanted me. And I would look at the tape. No one did. And I would look at the tape that I would send, and I'd pop it back in the machine, and I could tell where they either hit eject, because they were like not interested, or if they even watched the tape. But whatever, they didn't want me. But so anyhow, I get this job, and she says, here's the catch. You're only making $25,000 a year with 3% increases. Now, she was a nice lady. She said, now, even though I'm supposed to take 10%, she said, I'll take only 5%. Because I feel bad for you.
That's good.
So she was a good lady. So halfway into my stint there, she passed away. She was very old. It wasn't like a big surprise. But she passed away, and I got another agent. And the good news was I had a better tape because I had real stories that were broadcast on television. And I signed with one of the big agencies, which seemed like a dream come true, and it turned out to be a nightmare because I was the least important person at that agency. They never took my call. The guy never returned my call until he was driving home in his car where he couldn't take notes. And I thought, okay, I know where I stand here. So I started realizing, okay, if you want to get out of Dayton, Ohio, you got to hustle yourself, which is a very valuable lesson. No one's going to work for you like how you're going to work for you. So after every day at work, if I had a good live shot, I'd go back to the newsroom. I was doing live shots all hours of the day, 11 p.m. at night, 5 in the morning news, the midday news, the evening news, whatever it was. I would go back to the station, and I would sit in an edit bay, and I would put together a tape if a better story came along, I felt like, was a better representation of my work, I would bump off the old story. And I started sending tapes out on my own because my agent was like basically telling me, I don't know, kid, I don't have any nibbles. Nobody's interested in you. So I sent my tape to WCBS, which was the local station in New York City, because one night on the wires, I heard, I don't know how it is in newsrooms now, but back then, when there was breaking news on our computer terminals, you would hear like beep. So I come back and I hear like beep, 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 and then it says like urgent, urgent, urgent. And it said WCBS in a groundbreaking move fires 7 anchors in one night. So I worked with the kid from New Jersey and the girl from Yonkers. We all wanted to get back to New York. And I was like, Nathan, Brenda, I'm like, we're all staying. We're getting jobs. They fired 7 people. They've got to hire some people, right? So we all stayed late. We put together tapes. And lo and behold, that news director, now I wasn't going to go in and anchor. I had never anchored in my life, not even in Dayton, Ohio. They called. They said, we've just cleaned house.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. I was like, go on. And so they basically dumped their 7 highest paid anchors. I mean, these people were making like $2 million a year and getting beat by reruns of Full House. So the general manager was like, get rid of these overpaid losers and let's bring in fresh talent, hungry talent, younger talent, cheaper talent.
That's it. That's great. One of the things I wanted to ask, because you talked about hustle. And so I was listening to talk, and I thought, where did the hustle come from? It can't, did it come from your childhood? Where did that...
Growing up in Queens
hustle
helped.
Yeah, okay, good.
Growing up in Queens,
Yeah.
I kind of feel like, I always say I kind of saw it all.
Yeah, New York, yeah.
And being a New Yorker, you kind of have to hustle to survive. Mm-hmm. You also have to have the innate ability to be a good talker, because you're going to get a lot of doors slammed on your face when you want that interview. Mm-hmm. You have to have a way about you. You have to, you can't go in like guns blazing, like, 60 Minutes style, like, all right, roll the camera, and you're barging in. You have to get to that kind of Steve Croft level to do that. But in the beginning, when you're trying to build your sources, that's really important. You, like for example, in Dayton, Ohio, if you had a reputation for someone who would put on the air a fair story, you were going to get people who would want to call you to tell you their story. And you wouldn't get a door slammed in your face. You have to build sources down at the police department, with the police chief, because when they have a good relationship with you, they'll call you. For example, the police department, look, they have their own PR campaign, right? If they get a big arrest, they want the cameras there. So they'll call the newsroom and be like, all right, there's going to be what we call a perpetrator walk. That's when the police put the perpetrator in handcuffs and then they parade them past our cameras. But guess what? How did the cameras know to get there? Because they called us first, and the same thing, like a detective might call a reporter and be like, all right, this is off the record information, but that guy we just arrested, the suspect, you have to be careful with the language. It's always alleged until the person's proven guilty. They're a suspect until, you can't just call them, the murderer was arrested today. No, you got to do a whole trial. You'll get calls from detectives who will be like, you didn't hear this from me, but, he's also wanted in Tallahassee, Florida for X, Y, and Z. And suddenly you have an exclusive story or exclusive information. And you start developing a good reputation. That's what you want to do if you want to be a journalist where people will come to you. Barbara Walters, for example.
Yeah.
When someone wants to talk, there are just a handful of people they want to talk to. It's like Diane Sawyer, Barbara Walters, because they know these women are going to do a fair and accurate job. They're not going to go in with an agenda, which is the worst thing you can do for your reputation and the reputation of the news organization you represent. But it happens, and I think that what's changed a lot from when I first got out into the working world to today, like we didn't have Fox News then. You cannot tell me there's not an agenda there.
So when you were in Dayton and I guess here, can you think of the best advice you got? I think in my own life, this is what I think. I remember I was at the Los Angeles Times and Clay Felker, the founder of New York Magazine, wanted me to leave the LA Times to go to work for him. And I thought, oh no, man, I just arrived at the Los Angeles Times. I don't want to do this. And I said, why should I do it? And he said, because the ball's in your court. And when the ball's in your court in life, you have to play it. And I don't know whether that was good, but I did. And I have always followed it. Can you think of something where you really, some advice that you got then has stayed with you?
A few things, and it's more like on-the-job training. One tip I learned, there was a guy who wrote for the Seattle, what was the big Seattle paper?
Post-Intelligencer?
Post-Intelligencer. He was an investigative reporter. This is a really good tip if anyone wants to be an investigative journalist. And I listened to one of his lectures. This is back when you had cassette tapes. And I listened to one of his lectures, and he said, learn how to read upside down. Because he would be in somebody's office.
Good tip, yeah.
And all of a sudden, the phone would ring. They say, oh, hold on a second. Oh, let me get this phone. And he'd be like,
yeah, very good. It's a good tip. Yeah,
that's
I like
a good
that.
tip.
Yeah, it is a good tip.
Learn to read upside down was
Hold
one
on,
good tip.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Another good tip is, I figured this one out later in life. I was an intern at CBS News when I was 19. It was my summer between sophomore year and junior year. I went back to Queens, lived at my parents' house.
This is important.
And it was my first exposure to a newsroom. And looking back, and even then I knew I was the worst. I don't know, I was a little bit shy. I just wasn't into it for whatever reason. And I didn't get as much out of it as I could have or should have. And then I realized when I was in Dayton, Ohio, and I would see these college interns come in every semester, and none of them would talk to me. None of them would talk to any of them. They would just kind of hang out with each other and be in the corner and whisper and ha ha he he. And I thought, these kids are so silly. But I was in their shoes years ago. If one of them would just come to me and say, I'm so-and-so, I'm an intern here, I want to do what you do, and I'm here to help you with anything you need. Anything you need. You need phone calls made, you need me to go out on a story with you, to, carry your bag just so I can watch how you do an interview. If any of these kids had introduced themselves and offered their services to me, not only would I have benefited, more so, they would have benefited. So if you guys go into an internship, you find that person in the newsroom that has the job you want or you think you want when you graduate here, and you introduce yourself and you say, I'm here to do anything you need to help you with your job because I want to learn by watching and listening to you. And most people, who would turn that down? You're offering free labor.
Right. That's exactly. Yeah. Come on, do it.
You're going to get more out of it than that person is, than that executive producer or stage manager or anchorman or reporter. You're going to get more out of it. And most of all, you have to go with your gut. Because if you guys are ever in a job where you're doing live television, look, your producer is going to give you a list of questions, what we call suggested questions to ask, right? So you can just be you can look all pretty and you can sit down and you say, so Mary, how did you first get into journalism? And you have to be a good listener. If you're not
do have to
listening,
That is the really important thing.
that is the most important thing. Because then if I'm not listening, you could have said yes, and then, I assassinated,
Right.
JFK. I'm like, oh, do you have any hobbies?
That's exactly
awful.
right. This is exactly
Awful.
right.
In journalism, especially live TV, you have to know, you have to study your subject. You know why he or she is sitting in front of you being interviewed with you. The key is you have to know the first question. As long as you memorize that first question you want to ask and you listen, the rest of the work is done for you because you're going to know what that follow-up is. And then you start having a conversation. And that's going to be more interesting to watch than any Q&A with number 3,
The conversations are always the things that lead to breaking news and to really important interviews. It's not, you can prepare and prepare and prepare, but if you're not paying attention, listening
And go
to what
with
you're
your
doing,
gut. And
Yeah.
go with your gut.
Yeah,
Because there will
exactly.
be times where, also if you're on live television, you're going to probably wear an earpiece and your executive producer, your producer, somebody is talking to you in the control room. And there will be times where a producer will suggest a question or demand you ask a certain question. But if it doesn't feel right in your gut, you don't do it.
Don't ask it. Yeah.
Even if it's your boss. If your boss or your producer is giving you suggested questions and you don't like it, your gut tells you that's a softball interview or these are lame questions, rewrite it and do it yourself. Because at the end of the day, people at home, they don't know that you had some, suggested lame questions on a piece of paper. All they know is, boy, she didn't ask good questions or she wasn't listening.
She didn't do the follow-up.
Yeah, she didn't do
She
the
didn't
obvious
do-
follow-up.
Exactly. It's like what happened to Brian Williams when he was in Russia doing an interview with, what's his,
Putin? No.
no, yes, Snowden. And he didn't ask the follow-up questions. And people thought, oh my God. But one of the things, when I introduced you, and I really do mean this, you and this very small group of women have taken journalism in a completely different way. You've really expanded it. So I want you to talk about this thing of, it used to be that if you were a hard, news journalist, that's all you could do. But look at you. You've done Big Brother. You're doing a talk show. So talk about those decisions. And were they difficult or were they?
They
Did
were.
you understand? Yeah, talk about that.
When so I got hired at WCBS Local News. The good news about being in the #1 market is you are seen by the network executives who make the decisions on who's going to sit at the evening news desk. So there's good news and there's bad news. If you suck, they're like, I'll never hire that person. If you're good, you might get discovered. So I was doing local news, and our station manager got a promotion. He got picked to go to the network to recreate the morning news. He and how many people in this room know who Bryant Gumbel is? A few. Okay, Bryant Gumbel now has a show on HBO called Real Sports. But back in the day, he was the Matt Lauer. Okay, he and Katie Couric took the Today Show to #1. So Bryant Gumbel was kind of in retirement, and he was being plucked out of retirement to come back to morning news, but not for NBC, not on the Today Show, on CBS. So they hired him and his executive producer from the Today Show back in the day when they were #1 to recreate this morning newscast, and they had to put together the team. The good news was my station manager was that guy. So I already worked for this guy named Steve Friedman. And
Steve Friedman.
It was Steve Friedman, yeah. So
That's a good
he,
guy, yeah.
who actually was a news writer early in his career at KNBC Local News. So I get hired to be the news reader. basically, back then, the morning team consisted of 4 people. You had a male co-host, a female co-host, 2 people. You had a weather man or weather girl, but he's usually a man. And then you had a 4th person in, which was the newsreader. I was lucky enough to get the job as the newsreader. So I'm working as the newsreader, and when Bryant or his co-host, when they would like take vacation, I got to fill in as hosting the morning broadcast. I get a phone call from the president of CBS News, and he says, we want to offer you a job on the West Coast once a week doing live television for a reality show called Big Brother. And at this point, there was not a lot of reality TV on the air. This was back in 2000,
right?
yeah. We're in our 16th
I
season
know.
now. So this is a 2000, and Survivor had been on the air for 1 month, and it was huge. So the way they explained it to me was it's kind of like Survivor, but when the person gets voted out of the house instead of off the island, it happens on live television. You're the person who breaks it to them. They get kicked out of the house, they get evicted, and you do a live interview for them. And I was very baffled. I said, why do you want me? Why don't you just get an actress? Why don't you get a game show host? Why don't you? And they said, well, it's because it's live. We don't want to get an actor. We need someone who knows how to ask questions on live TV.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
So it made sense to me.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me get this straight. I said, if I take this job, because I was already at CBS News and I had my eye on 60 Minutes, I said, am I forever sealing that door shut to be a 60 Minutes correspondent?
That's the thing.
And the president of the news division at this point, to his credit, he was honest. He said, probably yes. And I said, well, thank you for your honesty. That answers the question. Thank you, but I'm going to turn down this job. Because I remember he had the flights worked out. You could still do the morning news, get on this plane, do the live thing, come back. I was like, oh my God. It was, my head was spinning. And I said, well, that answers that. I said, I had just been at the network like 8 months. And I thought, and I was 29 years old, and I thought, I could get on the fast track to being on 60 Minutes if I really work hard, this and that. And he said to me, well, if you don't take this job, technically, because you work for us, it can be considered insubordination. I was like, what? And I didn't know what to say. So I said, so I guess you're telling me I'm taking this job? And he said, well, it would really be frowned upon if you didn't. So I took the job. Now, little did I know. Okay, so I go on Big Brother, and that first season was horrible. I was horrible. The show was horrible. We didn't know what we were doing. It was just awful, 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 awful. The critics didn't like it. The public didn't really care for it because it wasn't Survivor, and it looked like the poor man's Survivor. So I see in the paper the next day. Now, how many people remember who Andy Rooney is? Show of hands. He was the old grouchy guy at the end of 60 Minutes who would just do commentary, be like, ever wonder why the lids on this don't screw up when you know. So he was like this. And by the way, not exactly a journalist. He was a guy who would comment on, it was like a Seinfeld episode. He would comment on things in everyday life. He goes to the New York Post and says, Julie Chen should, if our news president at CBS News had half a brain, he would fire Julie Chen immediately from the news division and just ship her off out to California and have her work for the entertainment division because she is blurring the lines between news and entertainment. And it was like, 60 Minutes. I mean, it was CBS News. We don't do that at CBS News. So we've come a long way. That didn't happen. I held both jobs for a long time. And then...
How did you handle the criticism?
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awful. You think you have a thick skin, and then you read one nasty comment, there was more than one, and you feel crushed, and the hardest part is when your parents have to read it. But then you get over it.
Yeah.
And then You do, it's like, well, not everyone's going to like me. I don't like everybody. And so it's a two-way street. So I continued to do both jobs for a long time. Fast forward to the year 2009, and I have my first child. I only have one child. I have my first and only child. And I had been doing the morning news at that point since '99. So I was 10 years in of getting up at the crack of dawn. And I was on the West Coast a lot. And this is a live show that goes out to the entire country from 7 to 9 a.m. East Coast time. So when I was in LA for Big Brother or whatever, I had to be live on the satellite, live on the Bird from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. here. And you had to be camera ready at 4 a.m. It was awful.
I remember that's when I first met you. I
interviewed you
at
in
4
the
a.m.
At 4 a.m. And there's Mary and I, and we're like in full drag, and you're so tired. And it's like, hi,
Yeah.
So after 10 years of that, and then having a baby, I was like, oh, I'm so tired all the time. So I took off 8 months for maternity leave. And lo and behold, while I was on maternity leave, my husband came home from work one day, and he said, Nina Tassler, the president of CBS Entertainment, was asking if you would be interested in perhaps moderating a female panel talk show, daytime talk show. And I was like, would I? Because the hours were going to be better. I was trying to become West Coast based for schooling reasons, family reasons, every reason. I was tired of New York, and we shot a pilot called The Talk, and it was first positioned as a female hosted panel talk show where everyone on the panel is a mom, and we're going to look at every story through the lens of motherhood. That lasted about a few months. You couldn't look at every story through the lens of being a mother. And nobody wants to hear a bunch of women talking about how they're going to save the world because they're the best mothers on the planet. Nobody wants to hear that. So season 2, we revamped the show, and it became pretty much what it is today, which is a lot of celebrity gossip, headlines. We'll rip stories from the news headlines, whether it's Donald Sterling or Justin Bieber getting slapped in a nightclub, and we'll talk about it. The first 20 minutes is kind of chat, the 5 ladies chat, the way you sit with your friends and you chat about, Beyonce and Jay-Z, what happened in that elevator with Solange, all that kind of stuff. That's fun. And then after 20 minutes, we have our celebrity guests, as you saw, people promoting their film, their TV show, their record, their restaurant. We cook and we laugh and we have a good time. It's an hour and I'm done. So I thought, this is a job I could do at this point in my life. So I was lucky enough that after shooting the pilot and after season 1, the ratings were decent enough that I got renewed for season 2. And
the ratings are great, by the way.
The ratings have come a long way.
The ratings have really, in fact, I think twice this summer, or more than that, right, that you beat The View.
Yeah.
So this is something, I just want to make a comment about this. You don't have to comment on it, but the difference, as you can see, it's a very interesting thing. When a show, like a talk show like The View, begins to crumble, people leave, there's discord, it feels as if it's aged and it's crumbling and there's disloyalty, and viewers, I believe, just pull away. The Talk has an enormous amount of energy, and because because Julie is a journalist and some of the people are celebrities themselves, they can make fun of some of the things that are happening, but they also, I think all of you have a insight into what it really is like to be in the center of a storm, which brings a kind of compassion. It's a really, it's a really interesting show in that sense. And as the demographic changes, The Talk becomes the show of your generation, And The View was the show of my generation, although I was never home to watch it, but I mean,
You were working.
I was working, but I did watch it. So I wanted to say that, but there are two things I want to ask you, and then I want to open it up for questions. One, do you think that, as a woman, you've been able to do you think it is different for you as a woman now on television? Because I remember when I was growing up, if a woman were 35, except for Barbara Walters, it was done. It was over. Tell me about the difference you see. That's the first thing, and then I'll ask you one more thing and open it up.
Yeah, even when I was graduating here in '91, I would look at all the newscasters, and I was like, boy, all the anchormen have gray hair and pot bellies. And all the women are these cute blondes. And that was it isn't so much that anymore, but I will still say that I feel there's a level of sexism where women can't go gray if they're in front of the camera, but a man can. And I don't think that's ever going to change, because that's just a statement on society, not so much the media business. It's just double standard.
Mm-hmm. And the other question I want to ask you is about, and you've talked about this, I mean, you've really opened up discussion about diversity, because as you said, you weren't a blonde, and not only was it difficult for women when you were showing this, but there was so little diversity of any anchors, anybody on the news. So talk about that,
My first experience, look, when I decided I wanted to get into broadcast journalism, it was because when I grew up in New York in the 70s, you never saw anyone of Asian descent, male or female, on television unless it was a Godzilla movie or one of those bad kung fu flicks. Never. And even then, my parents were excited. But then, in maybe 1980, maybe 1979, I was 9 or 10 years old, there was a broadcaster on the local news in New York on WABC, Channel 7, named Kaidi Tang. And my mom was so overjoyed. And she was just proud as a fellow Asian. And my mom was like, you could do that. And I was like, okay. I just listened to my mom, whatever she said. I was the youngest of 3 girls, and I was her little buddy. So, my mom to this day is, in my opinion, the wisest person on the planet. And, as kids, you always want to please your parents. So she kind of planted that seed in my head early on. So I remember when I was graduating junior high school, you had to put in your yearbook, in 10 years I'll be, and I wrote, in 10 years I'll be anchoring the news in New York. And I just because I didn't know what to write. I didn't know it. And it was kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And then before I knew it, it was time to apply to colleges. And I knew I wanted 3 things out of college. My mom said to me and my 2 older sisters, there's one rule. You can't stay home for college. You have to get out in that real world. So I knew it had to be far away. I knew I wanted a journalism program. And I knew growing up in New York City, in Queens, that I wanted to be in a big city. USC offered all 3. So when I got my first on-air job, working in Los Angeles for 4 years at ABC Network News, you have a very diverse newsroom. You're in Los Angeles, and you're working with people like black, white, Hispanic. We had this cameraman, award-winning, from Vietnam. It's just a real melting pot. I go to Dayton, Ohio, and the news director who hired me said, here's my vision. I liked your resume tape. I think you have it. There was a woman named Marcella Raymond. He said, Marcella Raymond is the morning anchor. She's a star. She's going to be the main anchor. I'm going to move her from the morning desk to the 5 and the 11, the 5 p.m. and the 11 p.m. news. I see you taking over the mornings. And I was like, ooh, okay. So then this news director, 3 months into the job that I'm there, he gets a bigger job becoming the news director at WUSA in Washington, D.C., the Gannett-owned station. Gannett is the company that owns USA Today. So he leaves, and I'm like, I just see like my future like out the way. So the new news director comes in, and I say to him, now, so-and-so, when so-and-so left, here's what he saw happening. I don't know what your vision is, but I would love to, fill in anchor. I'd love to get on an anchor desk if I could, here and there, holidays, people. And he said to me, Julie, let's face it. We're in Dayton, Ohio. How relatable are you being Asian American to our viewing public? He's like, they don't look like you. Basically because of the way I looked, he told me, basically because I was Chinese, I was never going to sit on that anchor desk. So I knew then I had no future at that station. Even if, let's say, I, loved Dayton, Ohio, I knew I had no future there to grow. But that was a blessing in disguise because it motivated me to try and get a job where it was more diverse. So there were 4 cities I wanted to get a job in. New York, because I'm from there. San Francisco, because it's an awesome place, and there are a lot of Asians there, so I could probably get an anchor gig.
Relatable, yes.
San Diego, also a lot of Asians, and my sister lived there, still lives there. And Los Angeles, because I had 8 years in Los Angeles, between 4 years at SC and 4 years working. So I had friends here. And then I was lucky enough to get to WCBS. So this news director who hires me, he had a female Asian on staff. She was the morning anchor. She still works there. Her name is Cindy Hsu. So I remember when I walked in the newsroom, and she had been there for a number of years. I'd say maybe 7. And I come in, and I'm younger than she is, and the whispers start. Oh, Cindy Hsu's on her way out. This is the new one who's coming in. And it was like, what? But because that's how people looked at broadcasters of color. Well, we only need 1 black person. We only need 1 Asian person. We only need 1 Hispanic, especially on the anchor desk. My news director was so progressive. Cindy's co-anchor took vacation for a week. And this news director put me to co-anchor with Cindy Hsu. And I remember I got these phone calls and emails. People were like, unheard of, 2 Asian women sitting on the anchor desk. Like, good for Bill Carey, who was our news director, for doing that. Like, that was really cool. So slowly things started to change. And now when you turn on the news, local news here, there are lots of Asian men and women broadcasting, and not just 1 per station.
All right, that's a great story, and really speaks to the evolution of it. But it's so funny, and then when you said about your mother, because that's what I was asking in the beginning. Where did you get the hustle from? And when your mother said that you can do that, I thought, oh, what a great message she gave you. It was almost like she gave you a goal.
She did.
Yeah.
Let me just say, my mom is not a hustler at all.
No, she didn't have to be.
No, but it's something you either have or you can't.
Absolutely.
So when you say you got to learn how to hustle,
Yeah.
you can't teach it, you can't learn it.
No.
You just have it or you don't.
Right. All right, so I want to open it up to questions. Okay.
Ladies I work with, I'm the only person who kind of did a traditional path. And the world is so different today with the internet and YouTube. If you want to be a talk show host, you need some level of journalism under your belt. It could be print, but I'm going to say that's going to kind of slow down your train, just because print you have plenty of space to get your story across, right? I mean, your editor will tell you, like, yeah, you can have a jump page. You could have the story on the front page of the LA Times, and you could have a jump page on page like A19, and you have plenty of time. You don't have that in broadcast. To be a talk show host, you want to be on TV, right? You have to know timing. So you have to be able to, you're going to get slow talkers. You're going to get people who tell a story forever, and you're going to have your producer and your stage manager being like, and you're going to have to. So you need, I think, a job that I always feel like a newsroom helps. A newsroom will teach you deadline, how to ask questions, smart questions, how to manage your time, how to edit, how to listen. I always think getting into that local newsroom wherever and being a reporter is going to help you become a talk show host. That being said, the women I work with are all amazing, and none of them did this. But if you want to be a talk show host, there's a level of performance involved. And I remember I learned that from one of the journalism classes I took here. And my best friend and I said, the teacher said, somebody said in the classroom, if you guys want to be in front of the camera, you should all take an acting class. Perfect, because you know what? You're going to learn how to look, how to sound, what your good side is, what your bad side is, expressions on your face. You're going to learn a lot. It's about performance, how to walk, how to sit down, how to present yourself, how to carry yourself. An acting lesson will help you immensely. Old school people will be appalled to hear me say that, but it's the truth. It's television. And you have 3 seconds for people to judge if they like you or if they don't like you.
In the green shirt? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Drew. I'm actually a freshman studying broadcasting and digital journalism. And I had a question on social media. So I read an article Taylor Swift wrote for Time magazine saying how she thinks in the future artists will get signed on based on their social media presence. And how
Who wrote it, Taylor Swift?
Oh yeah, Taylor Swift.
For Time magazine?
Yeah.
And she said what?
That she thinks in the future artists will be signed based on their social media presence.
Oh yeah.
And how many fans and followers they have. And I'm wondering if you see the same future happening for journalism and reporters, whether on TV or print.
No, I don't, because what she says is very accurate, but she's a star. You have to remember, if you want to be a reporter or a journalist or a talk show host or broadcaster, you're not the star. You might be famous and you may get recognized on the street and you may live like a celebrity because you might make a lot of money, but you're never the star. And that's what you have to remember. That's why you have to be a good listener. What she's talking about is a popularity contest. She's talking about being a star. And that's what she's very good at. And with these, what happens today, speaking to what she says, Ariana Grande has something like 17.5 million followers on Twitter. I don't know how much of that, but a chunk of that is bought and paid for by the record label, because that's the business. Now, she happens to be incredibly talented and probably has an amazing future ahead of her, because she's young, she's pretty, she can dance, and she can sing. But she has to learn presence. The thing that I spoke of about the acting class, Mariah Carey was watching Ariana Grande in something. And Mariah Carey, and this is all off the record stuff. But, when you work in my business, you have hair and makeup people, you all know the same people.
They tell everything.
They tell everything.
Yeah.
And this one person I work with, who also worked for many years and continues to work with Mariah Carey, Mariah said, Ariana Grande reminds me of me when I was starting out. I didn't have presence yet then either. She'll learn it. I have presence now because I learned it. Because she watched herself. Mariah Carey watched how awkward she was in those early videos, didn't know what to do with her shoulders. Now she walks out. She knows what to do with her shoulders.
Okay.
With the knowledge and skills that you have now, what do you wish you would have known when leaving Annenberg, or what tips would you have given to yourself graduating?
Did you hear that question, everybody? You just said with the knowledge. Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say with the knowledge and skills that she has now, what would she recommend to herself when leaving Annenberg, or what advice would she give to students that haven't had that professional experience going into that world with the knowledge and skills but not quite the experience?
I don't know if you can teach it, but I wish I was more confident when I had first graduated, and I wasn't so insecure, because you learn at a certain age that nobody's looking at you. They're all worrying about how their hair looks. Stop worrying about your own, you know. And I remember when I walked in to the interview for WCBS, I thought, Julie, you gotta look like you belong in the #1 market. You gotta look like you belong here in this newsroom. I mean, I was working with people I grew up watching, like the one guy who didn't get fired. But I remember walking down the hall, and it was so freaky because I was an intern in that building in 1989, and now we're in 1990. Yeah, I was an intern in 89, and I'm walking in 1997, almost 10 years later, for an interview. And I said to myself, you're not that shy little girl anymore who was an intern, who was a pretty bad intern. You want this job, you better walk in here like you belong here. I remember I walked in with my shoulders back and my head held high, and I had this big confident stride, and I walked past the assistant, the secretary to the news director, and I said, I'm here to see, Bill Carey, whatever, I'm Julia, whatever. And one of the other ladies, one of the other secretaries who was talking to the news director's secretary, she had this piece of paper. She was like, who are you? And I was like, I'm Julie Chen, whatever I did. I did my number. And she was like, girl, you walk with confidence. And I was like, it works. You can't walk in meek with your shoulders like this and like schlubby. You have to walk in proud. You have to get a nice suit. You have to look presentable. You have to comb your hair. You got it. Ladies, do your makeup right. Don't look like a drag queen. This was the best advice I learned. So I get into that job, and the main anchor there, who is still one of the anchors there, her name is Dana Tyler. And she was like my big sister, and she took me under my wing. And at that point, Dan Rather was the head of he was
the guy.
The guy who was on the evening news desk. He was like the god in our building. She said to me, Dan Rather once told me, Dana, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. So I remember walking in, getting the job as a general assignment reporter, but thinking, yeah, I'll be more comfortable if I'm wearing like my wellies, it's raining out today, and my jeans and my, rain boots or my flat shoes. But then I thought, they're always going to see me as a reporter. So I had a rain bag. I had a rain kit in case I did get to cover the storm. And I carried that damn bag with me every day just in case I got diverted. It was like a running joke. But I would dress for the job I wanted. So you got to dress up. You got to elevate yourself up.
So we have time for a few more questions. Okay, let's first, yeah.
Hello, I'm an exchange student from Hong Kong. So I'm just interested to know, what is the biggest difference between being a talk show host as well as a broadcast journalist? So in the transition period, how do you overcome all those challenges?
The question was, what's the biggest difference between when I was doing hard news and doing this daytime talk show? I was fortunate enough that when I did hard news, I covered the war in Iraq, but I was doing a 2-hour broadcast where anybody who watches Good Morning America, or not so much CBS This Morning because they're just into hard news now, but anyone who watches the Today Show or Good Morning America will tell you the top of the hour will be the hard news story, whatever it is, whether it's weather-related or politics, Putin, the Middle East, anything. But by the second hour, you're interviewing Jim Carrey and you're cooking with somebody. So I kind of had a little bit of that experience as a broadcaster to do all these things. The biggest difference now is I'm not interviewing newsmakers. I'm not getting sent to cover a war. I'm just doing the light and fun stuff. And you know what? At this age and stage of my life, it's a lot easier. I have a 5-year-old son. I can't get sent to the Middle East to cover something. I may not come back. I just can't get sent. So it's a lot more fun. It's not as important. It could be frivolous at times, but it's a living, and I love it.
The girl with the computer open with your glasses, yeah.
A year ago, you came out publicly about plastic surgery. You went early in your career and the racial pressure that caused you to get that. And you kind of spoke about how, things have advanced a lot since then, but have there been instances post-surgery that you still felt a lot of pressure, both being a woman and being Asian?
Just to bring people up to speed, a year ago, I revealed on the talk, we had to reveal secrets. Mine was that I had eyelid surgery. Some people interpreted it as to look less Asian. I had it done because when I was trying to get out of Dayton, Ohio, when I met with 3 big agents, before I signed with that one guy, this other agent I met with, he said to me, I looked at your resume tape. You definitely have the talent, you have the voice, you have the presence. What you need to do is get plastic surgery to get the double lid put in so your eyes look bigger. Because in your cutaway shots, when you're nodding your head and you're listening to the subject, you look disinterested. Your eyelids look heavy and you look bored. Not a good look for a broadcaster. He didn't say to get it done so I would look more Western. He was saying, you got to do it to look more interested. I got it done. It was scandalous in my family. Some members of my family wanted to disown me because they thought I was trying to look not Chinese. And this guy said, you get the surgery done, you will go to a top 10 market immediately. You don't get it done, you probably won't. I got it done, got into a top 10 market immediately. After that, I got to New York. It was hard to feel, I never felt because I was a woman I never felt because I was Asian, it was holding me back from the promotion or anything like that. Being a woman did affect my pay grade. It just did. When I was working at what was then called the Early Show, it was anchored by 1 guy and 3 women. One of the women, me, another one was white, another one was black. And the man, the white man, known as the man, made a lot more money than the 3 of us. And my argument was, you dusted off this old guy out of retirement who used to have this job and failed at it, and you're paying him more money than me. I'm the young up-and-comer. What gives? It's a double standard.
Yeah. Julie and I have fought the fight, so all of you can earn more money when you go out there. Let's take 2 more questions. You? Okay.
Hi, I'm a freshman here at USC, and I was wondering how you went about obtaining your first internship or job in the music industry.
Back then, there used to be like a book where you could get all the names of the, you got all the markets in front of you, 1 through whatever it is, 187, and it would say the address, the call letters, the phone number, who's the general manager, who's the news director. You call up the station, and now you can probably just do it online. I would call up the station, who's your internship coordinator? Every station has one. And then I sent my resume. And at that point, it was just a paper resume. They're not looking for a tape. They're not looking at video. You're an intern. They just want you to answer phones and, help write a news story or go out and ask an interview when they don't have enough reporters to send on like a, little story they don't really care about, but they need a soundbite. So, cold calling. Having a nice resume helps, but cold calling is how I did it.
Most of the shows have people, and Annenberg has a whole, it has such a good reputation. I've had so many interns from USC and who've been just terrific. Okay, last one. Is there a guy that has his hand up? No, okay, so, yeah.
Actually, okay, this is kind of awesome I'm talking to you, but you're an inspiration to females and the minority, and I just want to ask, on your pathway to success, I'm sure you've dealt with sexism, racism, and a bunch of criticism. How did you deal with this, and how did you work to this level of just national and global respect?
I would. So the question is, along the way, I'm sure you've dealt with racism, sexism, unfair treatment. How do you overcome and get to? How did you get here? Again, my upbringing in Queens really helped me a lot. It made me tough. When you grow up in Queens, and I grew up, early in Queens in the 70s. I mean, I was bullied. You hear all the words, you can just imagine it, right? That gives you a thicker skin. Dealing with it in the workplace, you have to know that if somebody, unfortunately, sometimes they're going to be in a position of power, your boss or a supervisor. For whatever reason, they may not like you or they may have it out for you. You just have to know if you're good, it is not about you, it's about them. And this person will, if you just keep doing a good job and you don't get emotional about it, because that'll just suck up your time, your energy, and it's just going to be the cycle swirl. You just have to just say, okay, like that news director, you're never going to anchor here. You're Chinese. Who can you relate to? Who relates to you? I was like, okay, you feel this way? I turned it around, and when I got a job offer, he was like, you can't leave. I was like, what? We still have you under contract. I was like, you basically told, I'm like, you didn't basically, you told me I have no future here. Like, now you just want me to serve out the year and a half left on my contract? Not fair. So luckily, if you have an agent, whatever, I did, you make them the bad guy. They negotiated for me to buy out my own contract. You have to just kind of, I put myself in his shoes for a minute. And I was like, yeah, I don't blame him. Why would he want to lose me? Like, I never call in sick. I always get the story done on time. I never miss a live shot. I tell the story well. I have sources. Like, yeah, I was a good worker bee. I was a good workhorse. So you just know you're going to encounter, every office has a jerk. And you're going to encounter it, male or female. And you just have to know, like, all right, I got to rise above it. I got to show this person, or not even so much this person, I got to prove to everyone else that this person doesn't know what he or she's talking about. And I'm qualified to be here.
So I really want to thank Julie for coming tonight for so many reasons, but I think as I'm listening to you, the thing I really feel is that you are such an inspiration to so many, women, well, and men, but so many young women here. And, this school, Wallis, gave all this money for this school for the future of journalism. And Julie has broken so many barriers to help women in the future of journalism. So I just thought you were the perfect first guest for the beginning of this, amazing era at the Annenberg School. And I want to thank your husband for coming. I've known him for many years. He always gives great advice, and the dean and everybody who came. Thank you so much, and thank you, Julie.